I do not so much mind making the attempt to advise law enforcement in the community, anybody who's willing to watch, about what's going on. Um, so much as I doubt their sincerity or willingness to do anything proactive or their ability to do anything proactive. We all saw at the insurrection police greeting the invaders, patting them on the shoulders for their crimes. And we witnessed with shock the death of people who were lured into participating, as well as police defending the Capitol. The insurrection mob that's organized as a trumpy tune mob scene does not need the Capitol of the United States to stage their Alice in Wonderland routines. They do a pretty destructive job pulling things from here in Tacoma. During World War II, you might wonder if my father was in the CIA and he was a member of the Fraternal Order of Police, and he was a white patriarch foiling the guerrilla imperative of the extreme warriors, warriors. Why would they assassinate him? It happened in World War II in Japan. The conservative nationalist elders were murdered by what were called the hotheads. So I introduced the term hotheads because it seems to help in characterizing what Peter Gabriel has been doing with all of the murders and tortures and rapes and arsons. And out of strategic necessity, they have engaged in homicidal attacks that are premised on false stories. It's strategic necessity. I think it's something they don't particularly care to do. They want their stories to make sense. We've noted their pendulum. They strike this side, then they strike that side, then they strike this side, then they strike that side to make it look like a feud. But it's clearing the air of the symbols so that people get back to accepting what they did, which was the AIDS attack and the COVID monstrosity. Well, they've been driven because of an increase in public understanding of who they are and what they're up to. They've been driven to create a hybrid scenario of confusion so that attempts to evaluate why they did something, how they did something, are riddled by not making sense. It's a chaos gesture, and it's very strategic and intelligent. So what it originates with is Peter Gabriel's claim to be running a house of fears, where John Lennon reached the death he feared most. And this stands for each and every incarnate warrior in the one-size-fits-all scene of the AIDS onslaught, who have embraced Peter Gabriel's leadership. And so he strikes out at any human fear that manifests itself that he can detect with his rapid eye movement vulture periscope. Well, the police listened to John Schulman for a long time. His books were disappearing from Carnegie Library. I was lured back to Pittsburgh for one thing, and Sam Hazo very guardedly acknowledged my insistence with the reading at Carnegie Library. They were aware that something was happening to the precious books. and they suspected Schulman by then, those who weren't involved. Those who were involved were taking their time, much as the LAPD took its time arresting Manson because they wanted the clean house. They wanted some damage control. Schulman was allowed to say there must be some other explanation. Well, Pina Sinfield and Peter Gabriel have all played this game with Schulman. And of course, they wanted a house cleaning to minimize the likelihood of it getting back to them about them. But they tried to pull this idea that there was another explanation for Mount Desert Island. Jimmy's jealousy protecting Leslie Katz, and Peter Gabriel piped up Experience Park. I talked to a number of artists and technologists with Experience Park in mind while he was burning down laboratories and smacking the Exxon Valdez and taking hostages. They got around to killing some Kennedys and so on. And who was in there was this leader of the mentality. His name was Amanda Harcourt, an attorney for Yoko Ono, who led the attack on the World Trade Center with Diamanda Gullis. And if you look up her social connections, you'll see how perilously close it is to the White House. So what we have is a situation which is perfectly clear. They have mongered a theory of retribution warfare, a fulfillment of fears. It's a Gestapo-like program of antagonism for journalism. I was just an amateur journalist, but it came out how perceptive I was. Martha Gellhorn addressed me in a letter that was pretty prestigious. She opened up to me as an old woman. And yet they tried to stop my column and preemptively attacked me in childhood. And it came out that the explanation that Peter Gabriel was giving for Mount Desert Island was a cold-blooded lie, that I hadn't hurt anybody, that they had tortured me and implanted a neuroplasm, and I was resisting the convulsive arrest. Then they called it therapy for a while. They were saying sex was good therapy. Well, then they changed their minds and decided that sex was bad therapy, and they castrated a poet from America, these Roger Waters hippies, who presumed to be leading the flock of one-size-fits-all AIDS victims, and none of them can escape. There's nowhere that the AIDS victims can go to square up about my research showing that John Lennon pulled this maneuver to pacify and leave unprotected and recruit his victims from the spirit world. And you have a whole coterie of agency. Israeli lesbians moozing with the Dalai Lama, and it's called the Grangian Society. One of the Dejongs was up on Mount Desert Island. Tamo Dejong was the guru of both King Crimson and the Grangian Society, which is not far from eugenics. And when you understand eugenics, you can see what this militia is doing in Tacoma. They shoot people who make others say, I'm like that person. That could have been done to me. And so then everybody goes out and says, why isn't it being done to the other person's Grangian archetype? And so, but it is. They patent, the politics of these worms is the politics of disgruntled veterans who've gone berserk on whiskey and Justin Hoods for the Hangman Show and the old Capitol Estate, the people who with impunity get free rides, and so on. I mean, there's quite a bit of archaic horseplay in what these slaughterhouse crazies from hybrid warfare, the Putin Trump crowd who just, go to shoot up the towns like bikers on a rampage, And the logic of what they've done is what my research questions. I don't think Penis Gabriel ever had therapy in mind. He had mayhem in mind. And he had deception and cruelty in mind. That's all these people have in mind. They exploit things they make up out of thin air. I mean, they just make things up out of thin air and then exploit them. They get together and say, "Oh, that's unacceptable. That's spoiling for a fight." And it's strange. They just slap a sign on somebody's back that says "kick me," and then watch people kick him. And that's how they operate. And so much slips through it's one of those things. They're good at shoplifting, and they've shoplifted American heritage. Peter Gabriel's clever, stupid neurological story with the Watmakers about why they hustled me to Mount Desert Island was obviously empty all along. But they built momentum by making it a spectacle for their lunatics who got sick. And they have nowhere to turn. They have nowhere that they can go, except to the people who set them up, who give them the spectacle for their mongering. And it was the idea that Penis Gabriel cared about anybody was shown to be absurd. They poisoned me on the lip as an announcement of COVID. That's what they did. And then when COVID struck and everybody was in panic, they showed me these nuclear bombs. And they were pushing me around and stuff and showing me pictures of nuclear bombs. And it's the fucking administration. It's Jay Inslee and Bill Gates. There's no over the top. There's no way you can appeal up to an authority that would be able to convince them that they were insubordinate. Because many of these people are autonomic when it comes to subordination. They will do what Simon says, and there's no place you can appeal to say what's with this nightmare, because that's what it is. It's a nightmare, and it comes from the incredibly deranged mind of Peter Gabriel doing the odd jobs of Roger Waters, terrorizing me, killing people I love because Yoko Ono tells them to, and they will do what Simon says. Tulsi Gabbard is in on this. Bob Dylan is in on this. And if you look at the research, you see it was a strategic necessity to give people something to do in order to live with the existential nightmare of being afflicted. They called it cow hooves therapy and used a dog named Doo-Doo Rock in Goldsboro, Maine. South Goldsboro, Maine. So Peter Gabriel's tall tale about experience parks is just a showman heist myth. And the police don't care. Police are not on the level about any of it. They will do what Simon says, and it subordinates up to Ragusa. I mean, Yoko Ono, Jay Inslee. Am I saying Joe Biden winked at the murder of Cersei Kennedy? I don't see Joe Biden winking at the murder of Cersei Kennedy. I see a lot of hoodwinking going on about what happened. A lot of it. And I don't buy Joe Biden's story about it. He was only in on it for the Jeffing Corporation's tall tale about John Lennon, which is all it is. They came right out of the closet with it. by calling the album Double Fantasy. These people are experimenters who prefer a Gestapo society. That's all it is. It's nothing marvelous that will change the streets of Seattle for the enlightened. It's not. That's not what's going to happen with UW Dialectical. It's going to bring people to their knees with horror and trauma. That's what they did. That's what they did with COVID. That's what they did with AIDS. That's what they did with killing people out of the clear blue sky to pull plugs on the analysis room. Because when you start getting to the bottom of it, which is this cold, psychopathic war game of racial yimbo, double homiciding back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The whole thing makes sense. It's a Green Party multicultural syndicate building an arc, and they don't want that to get around. So they start mayheming in a way that's a little more confusing than that. Doesn't have a logic at all. And that's what they need to do as a smokescreen.